Welcome back to another Migraine Minicast. I am your host, Dr. Thompson Maesaks. Dr. Eric is on dad duty tonight, so it's just going to be us today. Thank you for continually coming back to listen and hang out with us. We hope this is continually helpful for you, and hopefully if you're listening out there, this topic will resonate with you because it's one we've been asked many times to speak on, and for good reason. It's one of the biggest topics that we deal with in the clinic. It is one of the biggest topics that really exists in migraine. There's whole specialists just that deal with hormones and migraine. So if you're one of those people out there that just gets a massive migraine right before their period, or they've gone through perimenopause, menopause, and had changes in their migraine frequency, or even had a kid. We have a person going through treatment right now that had a kid, and now she's just got the worst migraines ever. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about why it happens, things you can do to treat it. And yeah, we'll just get into everything that we treat clinically and kind of how we look at it. So a couple real big reasons right off the bat as to why big hormone changes can trigger migraines is the first one is estrogen influences a lot of neurotransmitters, and it changes how the brain processes pain. So it's really the more rapid drop in estrogen, not just low estrogen itself, that triggers these things. It's like the steep drop off. So right before your period starts, right after you have a child, it's a huge drop off. Your hormones change a lot in that period of time, and then that can often exacerbate migraines. And then perimenopause has, it's, if you've been through it, it's a hormonal roller coaster, basically, is highs and lows, and when you get the lows, you tend to have more migraines. So I think the statistic is around 60 to 70% of women with migraines have a pretty clearly defined pattern. So we see it. It's like one of the first things that we address if people are traveling for migraine care. We'll just have them run something called a Dutch test, which we'll talk about in a bit. The other thing it does, estrogen drops, has to do with the brain's excitability. So the sort of master hub of migraine is in this thing called the trigeminal nerve. And when estrogen drops, that nerve becomes a lot more sensitive. So if you've ever heard of something called cephaly, it's like a little electric thing you put on your forehead that's stimulating the trigeminal system as migraines come on. Has everything to do with head and face pain. So if you have huge drop in estrogen, you're going to feel your face and head pain significantly more, which is generally bad when you already feel terrible. You feel like your head's about to explode. And then the other big hormone that's really in play here, aside from estrogen, is something called progesterone. You've probably heard of it if you've ever gotten any kind of care for migraine. They have a lot of creams and pills and a lot of supplements we typically use, and it's important for a lot of reasons, but the main one is it supports something called GABA. GABA is like your brain's chill chemical. It tells everything to calm down. It makes neural tissue less excitable. Think of it as almost like the brake pedal for everything. And so when progesterone drops, which usually has some correlation with estrogen, the nervous system becomes a lot more reactive because it can't make that GABA. So that's also something to consider when you're having menstrual migraines as well, is the GABA production. And then last thing, the big one that we look at is how hormone changes affect the stomach. So estrogen fluctuations can oftentimes affect the gut motility, or how the stomach digests food, pushes it through, which can dramatically alter histamine levels. And we've had whole podcasts and even whole newsletters just on histamine and how important it is. So if you're not doing something to actively manage your histamine, you should. It's a huge deal. We had a patient that's had 22 or 23 migraines a month. She hasn't had one since she started taking an antihistamine. That was the first thing we did, and she thought it was like a miracle, but it's just current science. Check your histamines. And an interesting fact about your stomach also, why you should take care of it with migraines, is that your stomach makes all of your serotonin, well, most of it. And serotonin is your body's and brain's way of blocking out pain. So when you have headaches and you don't have any serotonin, it just hurts more. So then this is all just nice information, but like, what the hell do you do with it? And that's ultimately, I think, probably why a lot of you are listening to this, is to get helpful tips. So there's kind of two ways to go about it. So in general, some of the best practices are you should assess something called the HPA axis. It's got this super long name, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, just HPA axis for short. And it's much more effective to assess that in its entirety, because if you don't, you're kind of missing a lot of how it interacts with each other. So that would be the first thing I would ask your provider if you're going in with no knowledge, is I need to check my HPA axis. And one of the issues that we've seen with people going into their primary that aren't super specific and really well versed in managing hormonal migraines is oftentimes they'll do two things that we see as, maybe not the best way to go about it. The first is they'll only take one reading. So a lot of these hormones, specifically your cortisol, which is like your stress hormone, they come in cycles. So they typically are medium high in the morning. They go really high, or they should go really high right when you wake up. That's actually a marker of adrenal health, is how much your cortisol goes up in the first 30 minutes. It's called the cortical awakening response. So at the very least, be able to assess that. That's really helpful. And simultaneously, you want more than just estrogen and progesterone. There are some precursors that you'd want to look at to make sure, like, okay, do I have enough of the precursor to make estrogen? Do I have enough of that and I'm just not converting it into estrogen? Because a lot of times these really subtle issues, which don't require these just big, massive interventions, can be pretty easily supplemented out of. It ends up being just a couple enzymes to turn the precursors into estrogen or downregulate that. As opposed to, which is the second part of it, is the sort of injectable estrogens or bioidentical hormone replacement. Once you're on that, you're kind of on it for life, or at least for a very long time. Whereas some people are not as privy to that. Some are a little bit more holistically, or air quotes, alternative minded. Most of the people that we work with tend to be kind of on that side. It's probably why you're listening to this. So that's the suggestion I would make, is start with something called a Dutch test. So it tests the entire system, the HPA axis. It gives you a really nice full picture and a map of how your hormones are being metabolized, how they're being converted, how they're being cleared. So you can have migraine triggers with all of those things. So that's why we love that test. And when treating that test, it sometimes is a lot more, somewhere user-friendly, because you only really need to supplement these things for about 6 months to kind of reteach your system how to make hormones on their own. And then you kind of taper off them and just supplement as needed. Oftentimes that's a little bit more palatable for people than, okay, I'm going to be on these bioidentical hormones for the rest of my life. So I would start there. If the supplements don't give you everything that you need, then you can always use that same data and then go take it and show your medical provider. And then they'll be able to kind of supplement with the bioidentical aspects in addition. But a lot of times I've only seen a few that don't really respond to the way that we do it with supplementation and some dietary changes. So if you are having hormone related migraines, you're definitely not alone. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. It's Dr. Maesaka, that's spelled Maesaka at theneuroconnection.com. Be happy to point you in the right direction, answer any questions that you have. Last little helpful tip, vitamin E is really helpful. If you look up vitamin E protocol for migraines, just type that into Google. there is a very well-researched little trick. I think it's 3 days before and 2 days after your period, you take a certain dose of vitamin E, and it's supposed to help with a lot of the symptoms. Check that out. We've had some pretty good success with that. So that's all for this week's episode. I hope it's helpful. We are the Migraine Mentors. We will continue to make this information as free and accessible as we can. We thank you guys for continuing to come and listen. We genuinely appreciate the support. As always, if you have any questions or if you have topics that you'd like to learn more about, we're always looking for suggestions based on what you want to hear. So we'll absolutely make a whole episode just on something you want to hear about. All you have to do is email us. So thank you guys for your support. Hope you guys make it through the holidays safely and without migraines, and we'll see you next time.